Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Opposition Report. Today, I'm joined by John Beer, who is from the You Don't Know What You're Doing podcast, which is a podcast themed around Exeter City. John, how are we doing today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me, Ryan. I'm excited to be here.
Looking forward to the game on Saturday?
You know what? I actually am. I've had a new sort of lease of optimism after our win against Lincoln on the weekend, which is going to go down as a very important win this season. I think they're going to be a very tough side to beat. I think there was a brilliant stat that came out that was the lowest XG in a game for a team to win. I think we had zero point 0.3 XG and we managed to win it. So yeah, really nice away result, which obviously sets us up nicely for a good home game against your lot. And yeah, we've been good at home this season, so I'm looking forward to it.
Leads me on nicely to my first question. Obviously, before the win over Lincoln, you guys had lost four on the spin. Talk to me about the Lincoln game quickly and the feelings going into it, because I can imagine everyone was pretty down going into that game.
Yeah, I think a lot of City fans went into that with the understanding that we would probably be lucky to come away with a point. Obviously, Lincoln have made Sincil Bank a little bit of a fortress this season, so going there, we knew it was going to be tough. And the boys did them unbelievably, to be honest. They hung in the game against the side they're all over us. At times, they hit the post from far out with Freddie Draper, and I just thought, God, we'll be lucky to come away with a point here. And then in the end, we had a shot from the edge of the box that trickled into the corner from Kevin McDonald. And sometimes you need things like that to go your way. We've had a couple of decisions this season, sorry, in games like Huddersfield last weekend, where we scored a goal that probably wasn't offside, which would have got us a point. So, it all levels out over the course of the season. But it was just a brilliant way to sort of try and get ourselves back on track and get a win against the side that probably a lot of nine times out of 10 we don't win that game. So yeah, they were very pessimistic going into the game, but I think we've shown a resilience this weekend or last weekend that we can actually compete against the big boys in this league.
Would you say that you've sort of now turned a corner after that Lincoln result and sort of those four games that you lost in the spins kind of out of the mind now, or is it still kind of there and present? Because obviously, as you mentioned, it was the low amount of XG with the goal that you scored through McDonald.
Yeah, I think there's always with X. I think there's always that sense of like what's going to happen because when we haven't got the biggest budget, we've got a pretty tight squad in terms of we've had a few injuries recently, and it always seems to be the case of us. We seem to drop like flies at times, so there is always that feeling of apprehension going into any game week, really, because we're not one of the big boys that's going to compete. At the top of this table very regularly. We might start the season well or finish it well, but we're not ever going to be in and around it, I don't think. So, yeah, I think there's always a sense of every win is one step closer to being safe, which is our main objective this season and most seasons.
Wins this season have come against Wycombe, Blackpool, Lincoln, and Peterborough. Which of those games has stood out the most to you so far?
I think this is a tough one between two. Probably the Blackpool and Peterborough game. In those two home games, we sort of played those sides off the park. And at the time, the Blackpool result looked better than what it actually has turned out to be. Obviously, Blackpool haven't had the best start to the season. We probably thought they were going to do a little bit better given that some of the players they brought in. So to play them off the park the way we did, to play Peterborough off the park the way we did, it just shows exactly where we are, I think, which is really inconsistent. We can play unbelievably, and when we play the way we want to play and play out the back and play through the lines, we are superb at times. Unfortunately, we don't have the players, I don't think, to consistently deliver that. But when it clicks, it clicks. And if we can do that, it seems to be clicking more at home than it is away at the moment. If we can do that more regularly, if we could turn SJP into a little bit of a fortress and play like we have done in those games, we'll give anyone a good run for their money.
On the flip side of that, obviously losing seven games, has there been a defeat that's kind of stood out for all the wrong reasons for you guys?
Good question. Do you know what? The Huddersfield game at home a couple of weeks ago, I just thought that something in my mind started to question whether we were a side that were going to be able to grind out a result or grind out a point, which is when you're trying to survive in the league, or likewise if you're trying to get into those playoff spots or the automatic spots. Sometimes you need a side that's going to be able to grind out wins. They say they've said a lot about this Liverpool side until recent weeks that they've just found a way to get a result, and that's a sign of champions. And I think it's the same for the other end of the table. If you can find a way to get a result, whatever it may be, then you've got that better chance. And I just thought in that Huddersfield game, I was had a little worry that was don't know, we're that side this season. Under Gary, we've always been that side that's managed to get something from a game a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, we've had some bad performances as well, but I've just felt like we've always got a chance. And in that Huddersfield game, we were very lucky that it could have been 6 or 7. So, although we could have got a point after that offside goal, it's one of those weird games where you could have easily drawn, but also could have easily lost 7-0. And I think if you're not a football fan, you won't understand that. But if you're at the game, you really will. So yeah, probably the Huddersfield at home game is the one that sticks out to me the most because I just had that worry that maybe we're not going to have enough to sort of grind up those results. But then we showed that Lincoln that we can. So it's a little bit of a topsy-turvy start to the season.
You mentioned there that obviously staying in the division is kind of the aim for Exeter with the budget you guys have. Would you say the season's gone as expected, or is it slightly worse than you would have thought at this stage?
Yeah, it's such a funny question that because I genuinely never know what to expect. The last few seasons we've been, I think we were top going into the international break, not last season, the season before, the first international break. So it was, it's you just actually don't know, and then that can lead to a false sense of hope. Like I think the last couple of seasons when we started, when everyone's thought, oh, we might have a side that can maybe sneak into the playoffs or like push for top 10. And then it sort of tailed off in one of those seasons. We went 100 days without a win. So it is really hard to tell what to expect. I think this season, sorry, last season was one of the toughest. We obviously had Birmingham and Wrexham, and then other teams that were spending a lot. I think Huddersfield spent 3 million in January alone, or whatever it was, on Joe Taylor and Dion Charles. So you are always competing against budgets that are just unimaginable. I mean, our total budget will probably be something close to 3 million quid, and Huddersfield are spending that on one player. So it's always really hard to know what to expect. At the start of this season, I think people would have been, a little bit optimistic. I think we recruited quite well. We kept a core group of players that I think were good, sort of like Reece Cole and players like that, who I think are more than capable of playing at the top end of this division, and are probably top end League One players on their day. Um, but then obviously the start gives you a bit of that sense of dread, which is like, oh, God, is it going to be this season that we go down or whatever? I think as a Exeter fan, you're always sort of naturally looking down, which I know is a negative way to look, but I think it's just a better way to look. It's a better way to be realistic than try and get your hopes up and then be sucker punched if you like. So yeah, I think there was a sense of optimism, like there is at the start of every season, but I think that's quickly brought back down to reality with the fixtures that have and the way they've gone.
Let's address the elephant in the room when it comes to Reading and Exeter. You, of course, signed a striker from us who was out of contract. Mr. Jaden Wareham joined Exeter in the summer. He has taken the number 9 shirt. And am I correct in saying it was so the shirt was retired for 9 years because of Adam Stansfield?
Yeah,
It came out of retirement. Do you want to explain a little bit more about the process? I know we spoke a bit off air, but do you want
yeah.
to running fans kind of how Jaden came to wearing the number 9 because I think a lot of us were like, oh, they've retired the shirt and bought it out for Jaden and maybe weren't aware of everything else that was around it.
Yeah, so to a degree, it's kind of right, but also not 100% right. And it's not the easiest thing to get your head around unless you're an Exeter fan. You just wouldn't know because why would you keep up to date with it? But basically, what happened was, obviously, sadly, Adam Stansfield passed. Can't remember exactly what year it was now, but he passed, and then it was retired for 9 years. After 9 years, it came out of retirement, and it was basically going to be used for. I think it might have been a little bit after 9 years as well. It might have been a few years after the actual passing date of the 9 years. It came out of retirement and it was basically allotted or assigned for a young academy number 9 to come through and wear it. So we had a chap called Ben Seymour who came out of the academy, looked like he was going to be a pretty decent young striker. So we gave him the number 9. Didn't quite work out. So then no one really took the number 9 after that. Jay Stansford then came on loan. Naturally, he was going to take that number 9. It was a fairy tale story. Scored a hat trick on the final day of the season wearing number 9 in front of his dad's stand at SJP. So it was a very poetic storyline there. Then it's been a couple of seasons since where no one's worn the number 9. And with it not being retired, anyone could have taken it. Anyone can take that number 9 if they so wish. But Jaden went about it very, very well. He went and asked the family and said, would you be okay if I wore the number 9? They obliged. They said it was absolutely fine. He put out a really heartfelt statement on Twitter saying that he'd asked and that they'd given permission. And it was really nice to see how that the family and Jaden went about it. And as a nice touch inside of the number 9 kit in the collar, there is Stano's name written inside of it. So in every time that Jay scores with a number 9, there's a little bit of Stano there as well. So it's a really nice way to do it and a really nice story. And I think I understand that sort of, oh, he's gone to Exeter, he's asked to take number 9 out of retirement, but that's not fully the story, and he did go about it the right way.
Yeah, I was quite interested to know kind of what happened with that because obviously, coming from a Reading fan's perspective, I knew there was some sort of law around the fact that Nine was retired and Jaden had taken it. So I was interested to see what had actually happened there. What's his start been like down south in Devon? How has he been getting on, and what has the fans been thinking of Jaden so far?
Do you know he is the perfect Exeter number nine in the sense that he's so hardworking, and that is epitomizes what Adam Stansfield was all about, and his son Jay. Incredibly, first of all, incredibly hardworking strikers that also had a ten. We seem clear to see what Jay's gone on to do, but have a real good eye for goal. Excuse me. So Jaden fits that bill in many senses. He's scored a couple of goals this season. He's worked extremely hard. I feel like he's been a little bit hard done by in games as well. He's been dragged off when maybe he probably didn't deserve to be. And obviously, I know Gary likes Josh McGuinness a lot and what he brings, so it's a little bit of competition with those two. Probably haven't seen enough of them playing together, but Jaden's been brilliant. I think like I said, he brings a lot of what City fans or what most football fans, not just Exeter fans, want in a number nine. That's someone that's going to work their socks off. He's very passionate every time he's scored. He's been right in with the fans. He's tapped the badge. He personifies a lot of what you want as a football player on the pitch, and I think he will click even better at some point. But he's had a pretty good start to life at Exeter, yeah, and it's been refreshing to have a number nine like that because in recent years, and this is no disrespect to Josh McGuinness, he just isn't the same type of player. Brilliant goal scorer, but not the same type of player. So yeah, it's great, and I hope those two can work off each other better in the future.
Jaden, of course, wasn't your only incoming across the summer. You've made a series of new signings. Joe Whitworth, obviously, re-signed on loan. Who has impressed you the most out of your new signings over the summer, and who's impressed you the least?
It's a really good question. The least is going to be is a bit of a harsh one, isn't it? But and for different reasons, right? Because I'll do the least first because I feel like let's get the negativity out of the way. But not that it's a negative, but I think a lot of people expected something different from Ethan Brearley. So he's a chap that we've got on loan from Brentford. I feel as though in possession he's so influential to the way we play. I think he's brilliant. I think sometimes he can go missing in games when you don't have a lot of the ball. I don't personally feel like he offers loads out of possession. I think the game can pass him by sometimes. In possession, superb, exactly what you'd expect from a Premier League player. Probably could work on that or a young Premier League player, sorry. So can probably work on that physical side of his game a little bit and probably gets a little bit more stuck in if you like. I know that's not the best terminology, but maybe just put himself about a little bit more. In possession, fantastic though. So he's probably the one that's like in quotation marks disappointing the most, just because I was really excited to see. I think he came with a lot of praise from Gab Sutton as well, who obviously is a very well-known football journalist for lower league football, and he said he was brilliant. So he came with this big expectation. I feel like he's been fine. He's played most games. Just feel like he could probably be a little bit better outside of possession. Finally, enough, the player who's impressed the most is his sort of midfield counterpart, so, a chap we signed from Ireland in Jake Doyle-Hayes. I think he's been absolutely superb. I don't know how the club have found him. I mean, he was playing in the Irish top division, I think, and he'd had a few spells in the Football League before that, I believe. But he's just been brilliant. He's exactly the kind of player you need next to someone like Brady. Very physical, not afraid to get stuck in, wins the ball back a lot, and then just plays it simple. Kind of like our Busquets a little bit is how I describe him. Probably a very big compliment to him. But yeah, Jake Doyle-Hayes for me is the one that if he plays on the weekend against you guys, which is I think it's a bit touch and go because he's got a bit of a knock, will be the one to look out for. And obviously we signed John Lee back on a permanent from Rangers. He'll start if he's fit, and he's a superb centre back to watch. So he's just got everything. Physicality, speed, and technically he is unbelievable. So he's one we're looking at, I think, for the future to sell on for some big money. So yeah, he'll be good to look out for as well.
On to the game then. Obviously, Gary Caldwell's spoken quite openly about the fact he's not too happy with the game that's going ahead. I think he said something along the lines of that we'll be playing a very different Exeter to what Lincoln would have played against. Mostly because I believe you're without Josh McGuinness. Is he the only player you haven't got across because of internationals, or is there a few more that you're missing as well?
No, I think it's just Josh McGuinness that's been called up for the internationals. But I think for the way that Gary wants to play, and certainly at home, I think Josh McGuinness is really key. Um, I'm not sure whether you know that statement is wholly true. I don't know if it will be a completely different Exeter side. Maybe it will be, and he'll know better than I will. But I don't know if it's shouldn't one player I don't think should impact our performance that much. Maybe it does, but as far as I'm aware, Josh is one of the only ones that's called up. And although he is one of our most influential players, our top goal scorer this season, I think we're still good enough, and we've still got a squad good enough to go and get a result in that game without Josh McGuinness.
Is there any fresh injury concerns? I know you mentioned Doyle Hayes maybe having a bit of a knock, but anyone else that will be missing from the game?
I don't think we've got too many, not other than sort of a couple of the long-term ones, but I think even they're coming back now. I think Jack Aitchison played a few minutes last week. Reece Cole sort of seems to be back and fully fit. Pierce Sweeney, who's really influential to the way we play, obviously been at the club for 10 years, which is incredibly rare nowadays. Had his testimonial a few months back. So yeah, I think we're looking pretty good fitness wise. We had a tough start to the season with injuries, but I think people are starting to come back, and I think we're going to start to reap the rewards of that.
And what formation will Gary Caldwell play on Saturday? What have you been playing
Well, it's
so far?
interesting. It's an interesting question because obviously last week we're starting with that 3/5 back, if you like, the 3-4-1-2. We like to play with that 1-10 and two strikers if we can, but obviously with Josh McGuinness not being there, it might be more of two tens with 1-6 rather than two sixes. But it'd be interesting to see. But if he wants to line up like he did against Lincoln and try and get something from the game like he has done, maybe a little bit more defensively, it'll probably be like a 3-4-1-2 with 1-10, and it'll be interesting to see who starts up front with Jaden.
Who's the one player I really need to watch out for? Because in my head, it's Jaden Wareham, because I feel like if he's going to be up for any game, it will be this one, given the sort of, no, I wouldn't say battle, but certain Reading fans' opinions of him. Got a feeling
Yeah.
he'll be up for it. But have you got another name as well alongside Jaden Wareham, maybe?
Yeah, I think for me, he's been one of my favourite players to watch for City through the years that I've been. I'm a real sucker for a technical player, someone that's just unbelievable technically, and Reece Cole has that in bucket loads. I think we joke on our pod all the time about him having pockets of Premier League ability, and honestly, his dead balls are superb. He's technically brilliant. He's not the most mobile, if you like. He's not going to skip past 6 or 7 players, but just he'll find that killer pass. And I feel like so many teams in this division would benefit from having someone like Reece Cole. So for me, he'd be the one to keep an eye out for. Obviously, Jaden will be a massive threat. And then I said before, John Leofeco, the guy the chap we signed from Rangers. We had him on loan last season, signed him permanently this season. Real big unit. I think he's 6'2", 6'3", big, strong, really quick, and technically brilliant. If you watch him, the way he passes the ball, he'll be punching it in. Which there's that technical ability that you can just see sometimes is maybe a level above where some of the other players are at in the squad. So yeah, those would be the three for me. And obviously Whitworth had a fantastic season last season and has gone on to sort of start replicating that again. So and again another real good player that we brought in.
And finally, can I push you on a score prediction? What's the score going to be on Saturday?
Yeah, so I think we did our Reading preview yesterday on our pod. I think I went for 1-0 and I'll stick with that. I think City will win 1-0. I think we'll make it hard for ourselves like we have done in games this season, but I think we'll have enough to get over the line.
We've had very mixed fortunes down the years at Exeter. Obviously, you beat us, I think, the first time we were down there back in the league. Was it Reece Cole who scored in the last minute?
Yeah, Reece Cole. Yeah, I
But
was
then
working for BBC Radio Devon that day, so they literally just posted the club today of the commentary for that game, and I'm going mental in the background. Yeah, great goal.
And then a few weeks later, obviously not to remind you, but we did come and win 9-0 in the Virtue Trophy or whatever it was called back then. John, thank you very much for joining me today. Where can Reading fans check out your stuff if they want to find out a little bit more about Exeter or maybe even watch your match preview as well?
Yeah, you can check us out on You Don't Know What You're Doing. It'll be on any platform you listen to your podcast and all that kind of stuff, and also on YouTube. So yes, You Don't Know What You're Doing. I do a podcast with David Earl, who's in Afterlife, and Alfie Indra, who some people might know from YouTube. So we do a pod together about Exeter City and just a little bit of life thrown in there as well. So yeah, check us out wherever you listen to your podcast, really.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much for joining me today, John, and come on, you Owls.